Hi there, once again, and welcome to another introduction to the third episode of our movie about the Amiga. So let's just catch up. In film 1 we talked about the introduction of Nolan Bushnell and his dominance on the market, and we looked at J Minor and his finishing touches to the Atari 2600 machine, the 8-bit system designed to dominate that market, and it really did. And in film 2, and in there we also saw the first design plans for Lorraine, which was a giant version of the Atari 800. You saw that J Minor came up with the idea in 1980, and by 1983 he was only just about getting the team together to actually build it. So those 3 years, you know, if he'd have invented that just a little sooner, it could have been a 70s machine, and it could have been the Atari Amiga. Absolutely, it could have been the next generation Atari. They turned him down. So if the 8-bit era was film number 2, now we move on to film number 3. And just to clean up a few things, in film number 2, yes, we looked at Warner Communications, the end of Nolan Bushnell and that era. We also looked at the ZX Spectrum, and why did I put the ZX Spectrum Plus 2, which came out in 1985, in the middle of, well, 1982, it looks like here, but I did that because I ran out of room in the film 4, which is 1984 to 1985, and that would have, well, that was in film 4, but I ripped the whole lot off section by section and rebuilt that and placed that earlier in the film. It ended up in film 2, unfortunately, because I wanted to move away from the 8-bit era, and because the Specky Plus 2 was an 8-bit machine, it ended up in the 8-bit film, which was film 2. And you could say film 1 is a 4-bit film, but there never was a 4-bit. The 6502 was an 8-bit chip, the Atari 2600 and the NES were all based on the same thing, as was the Commodore 64, so they were all 8-bit, and there was never a 4-bit era as far as I know. But here we go in film 3, here is the introduction of the 16-bit era, and we start with looking at Jack Tramiel, who's at this point still at Commodore, but he soon moved to Atari, taking virtually everybody from Commodore with him, so that old Atari is now old Commodore. And Atari at that point really is Atari name only, and it's really old Commodore under the surface. So we'll see what old Commodore get up to. We'll also see what new Commodore get up to in the next film, film 4, because they obviously have to employ lots of new staff after everybody leaves and joins Jack at Atari. But that's film 4. In film 3 we'll be looking at what he did after he left the CES show in his white Corvette, which was brand new with red leather seats given to him by his family, and after he resigned at the CES on the Sunday, on the 9th, he left in his new car and moved away and had a holiday for a while, and then he decided to start up his own company called Tramiel Technologies. So we see some of that and where Tramiel Technologies was, i.e. right around the corner from everybody in Silicon Valley. And I found that interesting because the building is just about to be torn down, and so maybe it has been, but there is still an image of that building on Google Earth, which I managed to grab before they updated that, and maybe that's now a block of offices and a cafe. But that was Jack's temporary holding, that was just an office, that was just Tramiel Technology, that was just to give him some business clout, some substantial, you know, some holding in the business, and using that name over the door he then bought Atari. And well, he said he bought Atari, in fact he didn't pay anything for Atari, Warner just gave it away. So basically that's the story of this film, and meanwhile of course J Minor and the Amiga crew are building the prototype, which we will call Lorraine, and it was Lorraine on the whiteboard, you'll notice whilst you're playing this, Lorraine was a legitimate name for the prototype. And there were the D machines, which we'll be talking about, and also a bit later the Velvet machines, which all appeared before the Amiga, which was later, when the Amiga 2000 came out, that was known as the Commodore A1000 or the Amiga 1000. But that was also known just purely as the Amiga. So we will see the construction of that. We don't know really much about that, and my detective work has pieced some things together from all the interviews and everything I've read on the subject. But it's fascinating to find out how much Atari was involved all the way through the process of the Amiga, building and cajoling and, you know, really thriving to copy the Amiga. And the Atari Amiga happened in the form of the Atari ST, but the original Atari Amiga never got built. So this film is that story, which you've probably not heard before. The Atari Mickey, it's not really a story that most people know, and that was the original Amiga based on the Amiga. So unfortunately that didn't last. As soon as Jack Tramiel walked in the door, he realised he'd never get the custom chips, the Agnes, the Paula, or Portia as it was known, the Denise, as Daphne as it was known then. He'd never get his hands on those, so he might as well throw away all these Amiga prototypes and all these design documents and just build something else based on them. So that's what he did, and we'll see that in film 4. So this is shaping up to be a great release of the Amiga, and one or two production notes before we move on to a few other things. This film was really easy compared to the others. You might see it's on 29% rendered, which means it will probably finish around 11 o'clock, maybe 1 o'clock tonight, which means yet again I'm locked out of my machine. It is now Wednesday, and it means I'm locked out while this thing renders, but it means I've got Thursday and Friday to upload it, which means I can get the subtitles done before time this time. And yes, I have gone back and fixed the subtitles for film 2, if you happen to watch that. Before I fixed those, they were now fixed, or as far as I could mention. But I didn't mention the Palo Alto Computer Club, which is a slight shame, but I really won't be mentioning that, basically because I don't mind compiling a paragraph into a sentence, but I do mind compiling an entire book into a sentence, and that was what it would have been, because computer clubs existed even before computers existed, and that's mind-blowing in itself. And so it all happened at the Palo Alto Computer Club, and Steve Wozniak brought the Apple I in, showing everybody before people knew what a microcomputer was. It wasn't even coined in those days, but they already had computer clubs, so that goes way back, and computer magazines and fanzines and things like that started before the microcomputer as we know it today. And apart from one track which is too loud and a few bits of Ghostbusters, the second remix, which is too loud, which I realised, I can't really go back and change that without re-rendering and breaking things, so if it ain't broke completely, let's not fix it. Everything else is great, absolutely great, so this is the smoothest and the best and hopefully the most interesting part so far. I'll fix the odds and ends thanks to your feedback, and don't worry about the comments on YouTube because YouTube gets rid of those after a few years, and so it culls comments without anybody saying so, so your precious comments will get read by me. That's the important thing, and I will be able to fix that video. So I've had some comments already. The volume on this one is a bit louder than the previous ones because the video is cut to the music, so I did want the music to be in there. But it's not so loud, hopefully, that it spoils things, except for where mentioned, as I say, the Ghostbusters, but whatever. And so, what else is there? The Aquarius machine. Why is the Aquarius machine featured in your video after the announcement of the Commodore 16 saying that the Aquarius machines had already died by then? Well, the answer to that question is there are 3 dates, as I keep saying. There is the announcement date, the launch date, the release date. In this case, we're talking about the Commodore 16 launch date. and the Commodore 16 and plus 4 machines didn't really get going until 1986, 87. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but 86, 87, maybe even 88, and then the market shot up there and became a worldwide success. But before that, it didn't really do much, whereas the Aquarius got released after the launch date of the Commodore 16. They were still building the Commodore 16s at this point, and it came and went within the same year, so that's why the Aquarius appears after the 16, and I said the 16 was there to defeat these machines that had already passed away. The Aquarius came, and by October, November, they'd already cancelled production, and they had to give away the rights back to their manufacturer. So that's the Aquarius. Things aren't in the absolute perfect order, but they are in theory. And so I mentioned Denise in this, when you can see Daphne on the board. Again, you know, I mentioned that is the name in the prototype form, so do listen out for that. It isn't a spelling mistake, and I have tried to go through this and correct all the errors. And so that's basically it. Oh, the NES will also appear in this video because it goes from 1983 to 1984. So that means all you NES lovers, yes, ZX Spectrum is out the picture, and we now get NES. And the NES machine, well, that kicked off in, well, it was designed in 82, kicked off in 83, and that was introduced in 84. It didn't do anything. It was redesigned. It didn't do anything. It was redesigned. It didn't do anything. And finally, correct me if I'm wrong, you know, guys, AVGN, that thing really took off in 88, 89, 90, when everybody had an NES and all the great games came over from Japan. So, again, Jack Tramiel said that the market really takes off after you've built up the software and the hardware, maybe after 2 or 3 years. So it really does take some time, and don't forget the Amiga, released in 85, didn't become a hit until 88, 89, 90. So you really have to have these machines around for a long time. And it's surprising that an 8-bit NES machine, an 82 NES machine, carried on until 1990, 91, but so did the Commodore 64 in its heyday, and so these machines were around for a long time. So that just about covers this section. So we are now up 32%, which is at least 3% better than it was last time. And yes, I'm just kicking around. Why does the PCB maintain twice? I'm just trying to figure out my notes here. That's confusing. Well, can't quite figure out my notes on that one. But yes, I hope that I haven't repeated too many photographs too many times. There is one photograph of the Amiga with wires hanging out of it that repeats. I couldn't find any others, fortunately. There is a mock-up of Dave Haney, which I couldn't find, and then did find a picture of Dave Haney so you can see the mock-up, and then it wiped to the new one. Just to keep that in there as a bit of a gag. Yes, it's a comedy all the way through again. Ah yes, it wasn't PCB, it was P and B. We're talking about the Commodore P machines, the P500 and the B500. You remember that one. Why does that appear again in this video? Well, for a number of reasons. Again, we were looking at the launch date in the previous video, and the supposed release date in this one. Fortunately didn't get any orders. So yet again, for a second successive CES, they walked away with nothing. So the Commodore P machines and the B machines are quite confusing because, well, according to the research that I found anyway, the P machine was a business computer and the B machine was a personal computer. I'm quite sure about that because you would have thought that was the opposite way around. But again, sometimes the research in this is quite confusing, so I hope I got that the right way around. And if I didn't, well, you can forgive me because hopefully those machines are virtually the same, apart from one was a little more expandable, you could plug more in it, but it was the same thing under the skin, had the same arms and legs, it just had a few more hairs on it. And so the P and the B machines are in this video again, and this time in this video, because we saw the invention of the silicon chip in the first video and in the second video, well, we'll be seeing this the P and B machines again, but this time I show you a few more of those and I list all of the P and B machines I can find. P500 and B500, and all the names that was known under and released as C720, the C730, the C740, all the major minor revisions that was released as, and of course they only sold a handful in the entire world. So that's the P and the B machines, that's why it appears twice and that's why it's confusing in this video. And well, the main thing is they didn't sell any. It's Commodore related, so I found that fascinating, not knowing anything about that before I started this research, as well as all the other Commodore machines. To my mind, it was the Commodore 16, the Commodore Plus 4, the Commodore 64, the Commodore VIC-20 and the Commodore Amiga. So, well, there are quite a few Commodores out there, and as they say, well, only 1 in 4 of those actually gets to the market. So we'll be seeing Commodore's evolvement as it moves from Commodore CBM, and when it leaves CBM behind and becomes Commodore Atari in this episode. And we'll see what Jack gets up to in the next one, Jack Tramiel. And so that's basically it. I hope you enjoyed these films so far. Again, this is just filling in some of the gaps, hopefully, in the old narration, because I couldn't fill in everything, and it's really important just to get a context and a flavour of everything. And maybe if you want to watch that again, you can do. Yes, the Amiga is in this one more than the others, and it will be in the next one as well, more even still. So there are a few screenshots in here which I unfortunately recorded on a PAL machine, but I made sure that in the next video with the full development of the Amiga, actually they're all recorded using an NTSC setup, which as far as I'm concerned is how the Amiga was presented into America, and then that was converted to Europe a little bit later on. So NTSC Workbench is how they saw that thing. So you're seeing maybe 2 inadvertent things that I recorded before I found out about this whole NTSC PAL fiasco from Shock 97. So we are talking quite some time ago that this thing has been in production, and I have had to change things and add a few things around, including the fact that I found out that the whole thing with Dave Needle and Mitchie the dog was blown out of all proportion, as was the Japanese lawnmower manufacturer who turned out to be Native American. But these stories do get blown up, so I found out that they actually resolved the issue over lunch. So that was how line draw got added into the Amiga, and I think Dale Look came up with the idea. It was a little cagey in the documentary, but I think that was his idea, I gather. So again, that's in the documentary, hopefully you'll gather it, and these are just threads of information that I managed to gather at the time. We don't really have time to go into all the other variations and all the little machines. We'll continue the NES story in the next part, which is fascinating. We'll continue the development and the creation of the Amiga. So sit back, relax and enjoy this one, and enjoy the music that I managed to find, which again, I love the music throughout this whole thing, so hopefully the new volume balancing is good. So thanks for watching. You went into this and you put your money into this, so it's our video. So I'm fascinated by this whole thing myself, and you can guarantee at the end of all this I'll be sitting there and watching the whole thing back to back to see what it looks like, because I haven't seen it yet either. And I haven't worked on film 4 for about 4 weeks, so I'm going to see that hopefully on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because I'm a little bit behind with it. But that's the one where we get to see the development of the Workbench, and we've got the hardware, concrete, and yes, to finish this entire thing, yes, the first Amiga was actually not hardware, it was actually software, and it was an emulator. It was an Amiga emulator known as Agony, which is quite interesting given the Psygnosis Agony connection, but it was known as Agony, and they programmed the Amiga. Well, they basically had an emulator running what the Amiga would be like on a Sage Mark IV machine. And they tested things out and made sure that things would work on the real hardware, and when they had programs developed, they then took those programs and pipelined those over via serial and put those directly into the Amiga's memory and said, there you go, what do you think about that? And if the hardware didn't fall over instantly, they knew that they had something running and working. If it did fall over, they didn't lose anything because the software was running on Sage 4, not the Amiga. So it didn't lose hours of re-rendering, re-compressing and whatever they had to do to get that sorted out. So that's what happened. The first Amiga was actually an emulator, and then they made the real thing. So I thought that was fascinating, as I find it all fascinating, and I hope you pause this thing on the court cases and things like that and actually read some stuff. It's fascinating. And I couldn't find adverts for absolutely everything and things that related to absolutely everything, but hopefully there is enough info there to flash out this whole thing. And behind the scenes there are quite some stuff that I haven't put in there, the pictures and even things that I've narrated and then edited out, unfortunately, because this thing could just carry on and on and on. The point is to introduce the fact that the Amiga was built over a 5-year period, and over that 5 years it was eventually copied and cloned and released before the Amiga. So we'll see that in the next part, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope to see you then. So, right now, 37%. Thanks very much.